annual income module. We have some exciting news to share about some screens that, depending on when you are viewing this, either are live currently or are about to go live in the near future. Our objective today is to do a quick overview of what is the 100% annual income test. We're going to look at the income screens in the One Applicant portal, and then there's going to be an opportunity for questions and answers. Okay, to start off, the 100% annual income test is a test that can be used to calculate eligibility based on income. So the normal way of doing things, sort of that first pass, is OHP will look at the modified adjusted gross income. You'll hear us use the term MAGI of a household, and we're looking for what's happening right now in this month. So the month in which someone applies, when that date of request is. So if today were to be June 6th, we're looking at all of June's income. We also look at the next month to see if someone is not eligible this month, maybe they may be about to become eligible, and that'll then potentially start benefits next month. So if today is June 6th, we would also be looking into July's income and projected income. What the annual income test does is it's a way for people who are ineligible either by this month and or next month to potentially be found eligible based on their annual income. And there are some differences between the methodology and the numbers we're using when it comes to monthly versus annual income tests. So this chart breaks it down pretty well. We have our monthly income test, which uses a variety of different federal poverty levels, or FPLs, and those are the ones on that handy chart we give you every year. So depending on what the demographics of a household and the individuals within it fall under, there will be different levels of income that count as eligible. For instance, CHIP for children goes up to 305%, OHP pregnant woman at 190%, and then adults is 138%. So that's an example of the different federal poverty levels we use. When it comes to the annual income test, however, no matter what your demographics are, we are using a 100% federal poverty level. So that applies to children, pregnant women, adults, whole 9 yards. Another difference is that people are not required to file taxes in order to be eligible based on our monthly standard. However, when it comes to the annual income test, we require people to file taxes. If people are married, they're required to file jointly. This isn't to say that we're asking you to require people to do things with their taxes, just to know that there are going to be some cases where the annual income test is not going to apply to that individual. And it's not completely based on financial eligibility here. There's a small difference in also the taxable income that is counted. For the annual income test, it's all taxable income. And when it comes to our monthly test, there are some types of taxable income that do not get counted. And that is also, once again, not to say that you should be telling people, like, oh, we need to really break down what is or isn't counted. You should be putting it all on the application. And then the one system, the machine in the background, will figure out how this all applies. So that's a breakdown of the differences between the two different income tests. The biggest one is that it's at 100%, and we added that into the name for this test to make sure that that key point is something that you all are aware of. So now we're going to look at all the income screens in One Applicant portal, starting with what we call the monthly income screens. And I'll be upfront, the monthly income screens as they currently stand and in the near future, they don't necessarily give you a monthly number, so it's a little bit of a misnomer. I like to think of it more as the what is happening right now screens. So the initial screens you see, and we'll go through some screenshots, they are designed to capture monthly income. When it comes to the applicant portal, it spits out an annual number after you've put in the income. But know that these are to capture that monthly income test we were talking about, sort of the normal way that we are used to doing for a majority of our members and applicants. The directions is to look at the information that people give you, the documentation or their self-attestation, and really enter it in the way that they give it to you. So if someone gets paid weekly, enter it into these screens weekly. If someone gives you a quarterly statement, you can put it in quarterly. What we want to do is try to capture the monthly income, but we want to use it based on the information you have at hand. When it comes to self-employment income, people are making their own documentation. We do prefer monthly. I'm not going to go too deeply into the very complicated things that can happen with exactly how people report income, because we have more modules where we'll be talking about that in depth. But we do prefer monthly, and we are looking for monthly in these initial screens. For example, this is one of those screens that are called monthly income screens. You'll see it breaks it down by job, self-employed, other income, and then expenses. So you would check the box for anyone who has that kind of income. You would put in the source. The source would be the employer, the amount based on how often they get paid and how much, and click Save. And you'll see, for instance, in this example, I put in a number and it's popping out. So if this were to happen the same throughout the entire year, this is the annual number. Know that what we're really doing in WorkReport on the back end is we're dividing this by 12 and looking at the monthly number. If someone has recently or will soon change, the amount of income they expect, this screen is not going to be a good way to capture that. We're just looking for the right now. So even if this number that it pops out looks wrong, if the information you put in looks correct for the current state, you just want to move forward like that. Very similar for self-employment income. Key it in, it will give you an annual number. Know that what we're really looking at are those monthly numbers. And it also does it for other types of income and expenses. I didn't show screenshots because it's pretty much the same story. And if you have taken our other trainings, then you should know how to put in income on those screens. Of course, you can always talk to your ROC if you have any questions. So I'm going to move forward to the annual income screens because this is the new information. These have recently changed or are about to change, and it's interesting the ways that we're.
This is what you've all been waiting for.
This is the meat of today's module. So here's an example of what it looks like. I know it's too small to read, so let's zoom in. We have new language at the top to explain. You see it's clearly labeled that it is the 100% annual income screen here. This information that you're seeing right here, we actually will have a slight addition to it that talks more about self-employment income and clarifies how to put that into this. As soon as we get those updates, we'll share it out to you all. But mostly this is just language that is trying to make it more clear than the pre-existing screen, what exactly it is we're looking at here and what we're looking for people to give us. If we look farther down, so this is all one screen, but it's a long screen, you will see that we have different income categories: earned, Social Security benefits, unearned income, and then expenses. Each of these sections has a little question mark now that you can click and get more information. So this is much more complete than the screen that was here before. It gives you a lot more guidance and gives clients a lot more guidance for what we're looking for. Another thing is that you'll see that the projected amount, it is already there. It's pre-populated. So it's grabbing information you put into those previous screens, moving it forward and saying, if the current state that you captured is the same as what you expect to happen for the whole year, you would expect this amount of earned income, this amount of Social Security income, and this amount of other unearned income. Is that correct? Do you think your annual income will be different than what is projected? If you say no, it automatically puts that information over to the far right-hand side of the screen. If you say yes, it is different, then it'll open up that screen and you can type a new number in. So you can have it pre-populated. You don't have to have written down all your notes about all the income from the previous screen. And then the client can say, actually that looks a little low. Maybe right now I'm making a little less than I will be later. Or, hey, that looks way too high. I've only had this job for 2 months and it only lasts another month. So these are opportunities to resolve those numbers.
This is really helpful for those of you who have been doing this for a while, like the seasonal worker. This is a way to be able to capture it when you put it in. Historically, it gives you that annual amount, and if it's not the annual amount, it prompts you with this opportunity if you think your annual income will be different than what is projected. So it's nice in that respect. And I'd add, like, when you click on the little question marks, you're able to see, like, you're not too sure about Social Security benefits or SSDI and what that means. Maybe you're new at this and you're not sure which income they're speaking to. Clicking on those gives you just a little bit more detail, and might also help the client if you're sitting with a client and they want to see exactly what it says.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, this is a lot of information on here, and I think it's done in a way that's a little more intuitive than what was here in the past.
And these are different applicants than the previous screen. We had hello and goodbye on our previous screen.
Yeah.
And John Doe and Jane Doe decided to apply instead partway through.
That is a fun part of the fact that these screens aren't live yet, is I couldn't grab screenshots of my own. I had to rely on the existing
We couldn't
ones.
actually put in hello and goodbye.
I like my example names a little bit.
Sure.
Let's see, another thing I want to talk about is that it is slicing and dicing the income in a different way than the other screens. So instead of saying job income, self-employment income, other income, it's earned income, which is essentially job and self-employment income, Social Security benefits and Social Security disability, and then unearned income. So it is a bit complex in that this is a way of breaking down income that we haven't done in the past, but it makes it very clear for our workers what the types of income are, and also plays into the rules engine really nicely. So this is all stuff that has been happening on the back end, but now it's also visible in Applicant Portal. As I mentioned, so there's the yes or no section. If you click no, this does not need to be changed. This is exactly right, which is a little counterintuitive, I have to admit, that no means yes. Please put this number over into the other column.
I think that's the quote for the day.
So if you listed, one note about this section is if you listed any income in the earlier income screen and you put an amount under $1, then our system is smart enough to say, hey, you said you have income right now, which means you must have income for the year. So there is some logic now also that is built into the system. It's a little bit smarter about trying to stop things from happening that would contradict other parts of the application. We do have a little set of new warning text at the bottom that says, by clicking next, you confirm that you have reviewed the information on the screen and agree that it is accurate. I would say essentially you should imagine this text on every single screen of the application.
Absolutely. Should be in your mind's eye no matter what.
I guess we're just making it really clear for this page that yes, that we are expecting that all of the information in the application has been reviewed.
Yeah.
So I think it goes without saying, but that's new text we added, so we're sharing it here. If you filled this screen out and then maybe you needed to update income on a different screen or update something else, you end up back to the screen after it has been filled out the first time, so you return to it. You will see pretty much the same thing. It will zero out, and so you'll have to go back through it again if you change the monthly income in a way that would make us think any part in this screen might be different. So if someone changes their monthly income from $1,000 a month down to $0, that's going to change the projected amount that we're expecting, and we're going to ask you to sort of re-examine the numbers you put in here and say like, hey, it looks like you lost your monthly income. Is this annual number still correct? And so you'll have to do it again, and that makes good sense. If the projected amount hasn't changed, then you won't be asked to do anything new on this page. But if the projected amount by that earlier income screen has changed, then you will. I hope that is clear.
That makes sense. I followed it.
Good.
And no one's asking questions about it. So.
Fantastic. Let's see. So yeah, I say it's screens. It's really just one screen, but it's a very long screen. So it has a lot of scrolling involved. And it does have to be filled out for everyone in the household. The good news is now it has a lot of predictions that screen is making, so that you don't have to key in a lot of numbers or a lot of zeros, which was previously the case. So a few notes. Annual income, it's only used if someone fails the monthly income test. So if they are not eligible by this month and or next month's income, then the annual income information may be used. A reminder that it has those non-financial requirements that are different from the monthly income test. So there are some reasons why people may not be eligible by this test either. Info is now pre-populated from those earlier income screens, but it does need to be reviewed, so it does require action. People should use their best estimate for the whole calendar year. So we're not asking how much have you made to date, although you can use a document that says I've made this much to date to help you make that decision. We are looking at that calendar year, so that's very important. So all of 2018, and when we get to 2019, all of 2019. Yeah. Unless a person truly expects to have no income or expenses, and they haven't for the year up to date, we really should be avoiding those zeros. And that expenses includes both allowable deductions and self-employment expenses. So that's one of the more confusing things about the new way it's slicing and dicing, is that the expenses is two different categories from the earlier screens put into one number. So those are some things just that have been tripping people up. When people are found to be potentially eligible via the annual income route, we may need verification. So we may need that at the time of application, during a renewal, or when someone reports a change. We will also, moving forward, these will be in a batch process. So every October, we will look through everyone who was annually verified last time around and ask them if they expect the same situation in 2019. So it's essentially doing that annual income verification for the next calendar year. And so that will be then moving forward every calendar year, unless people then switch over to the monthly income standard. We'll need some sort of verification or attestation about people's expected income.
We do have a question about, is it still going to ask for 2018 annual income?
I believe it's still asking for 2 years of income. And if I go back and look at the screen, let me find one where...
Yeah, while you're looking for it, I'll answer it or continue to reinforce it. So yes, it's going to continue to ask for 2 years, essentially. And that seems kind of crazy. And to me, to be honest, like I sort of cringe, like, why are they asking for income that we're almost sure we're not really going to need to look at or as part of the eligibility determination? But the reality is that there's a number of scenarios in which we might actually need it. And in the event to rather sort of avert having to do an RFI and try to get that information, we're just going to ask for it on the front end. So
yeah, I'm realizing the screenshot cut off, but right under this 2017, there's 2018 for the screens as they will exist in the near future. And then once we get into 2019, it'll switch over to 2018 and 2019. And I believe that's to keep for any contingency where we may need to use that other year's income, because there are pretty significant time periods where we might need to retro back to a previous year, and therefore we need that information.
So there's another question here. Will annual income information still be asked of minors and babies?
It will, but it will be automatically put to 0 if no income has been entered in the earlier screen. So it's predictive, but it is still going to ask you to say yes or no. So you don't have to wildly guess, but you will have to interact for every household member. Let's see, any other questions?
I have one question. I'm deciding whether to send it privately or ask it to the larger group. I'm not sure I know the answer yet, so give me a second. Kelsey.
Oh, I see. I think we can tackle this. So if someone has dropped off an application and it says, I have 0 income, but they say listed income elsewhere, I'd say if someone is dropping off an application, it is not your responsibility to make sure it is correct if you are just playing the role where you're helping that get to the processing center. I would say if you have the capacity and can reach people, then it's a great next step to let people know if there's some potential issues, but you're not required to do so.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do. You're right. And if you can't get a hold of them, that's ultimately the applicant or member's responsibility, not yours.
Ooh, question box is busy all of a sudden. Let's see here. Oh, these are great questions. I only have answers to some of them. I would say any of the questions that relate to the documentation and the request for more information, we're going to tackle that more in depth soon. Our processing center, because this is a fairly new process, is still working on getting us a list of exactly what they recommend and what they expect. So we'll have that soon, but we don't have it yet. Although I will say that we understand if it's annual income, we will potentially have no proof for what will be happening, for instance, in the next few months. And so we are going to rely a lot on self-attestation in submitting things and then explaining with an additional amount of text why your situation may be different from what you have documentation for.
So we have a question that basically Joanne asks, in summary, is it weighted more towards monthly income or towards annual income? It looks like you work with a lot of seasonal workers. In short, what we always do is we want to look at what's happening now, and we do that based upon this month's income and next month's income. So if we can see that they're eligible right now, then we're going to go ahead and try to make them eligible right now or next month based upon what that projection is. If under both of those circumstances we can't find them eligible, then let's say a seasonal worker would be a good example of it during farming season perhaps. They would be over income, but we know that on an annual income, they would be eligible for OHP. So at that point, that's where it'll be looking at the annual income. We won't really look at the annual income until we first know that you're not eligible for this month and next month. That's really the only time we're going to look at annual income. It's a method we use to ensure if we can't find you eligible for this month or next month, which is typically how Medicaid policy works, then at the state level, we are allowed to look at their annual income. From a federal government perspective, we don't actually have to look at the annual income, but the state of Oregon says we'd like to find folks eligible, if possible, given the types of scenarios that exist in the real world. And so that's when, then only if not eligible this month, next month, we'll look at the annual income. Hope that helps, Joanne.
Yeah, so the monthly income definitely takes precedence. We look at that
that's
first.
Weighted,
yeah. Which is a short way of saying what you said much more eloquently. Gosh, let's see. Someone was asking about, so that batch process that'll happen in October, that'll be asking people to estimate for the next coming calendar year. So something that goes out in, say, October 2018 will be asking, what do you expect for 2019? So we're going to be looking forward for that annual income standard.
Do you want to cover the retro question there?
I wish I could.
Yeah, I don't.
We'll look into whether that also, because I know that if someone fails.
Alex, that's your question.
This month, but then is annually, that also includes this month. So someone found to be annually eligible, it includes this month, even though they may be over income this month. But I have not heard that expressed
I have not
in
either.
terms of retro coverage. So we'll double check on that. That's a great question. I know a lot of you have great questions about the RFI documents, and because I don't have answers, I'm not going to guess. I'm just going to gather your feedback that you're putting in here, and I'll bring it to our processing center, and we'll get clarification.
Yeah, Diane, I know you're asking, like, what would be the types of proof for the annual income? And basically, the general rule of thumb for any request for information, there's sort of a hierarchy of requested documents. When you get to the section in the One Applicant portal, and it has a list of requested documents, there's sort of a hierarchy there, and you should look at what those documents are that are being asked for. And basically, the state of Oregon is looking for whatever is official or most official that can back it up. So, you know, if you're self-employed, we're going to look for, do you have a bookkeeping process that you use? Do you use QuickBooks? And can you back it up with your Schedule C from your previous tax year? Those might be the types of things that we're going to ask for. But in short, try to provide the proof that's asked for in the document or in the One Applicant portal.
And self-attestation is going to continue to be an option,
Yep.
especially for annual income, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people are required to file taxes to get the
Mhm.
annual income test, then that is a potential document to look for. And I know we've had some inconsistencies with what you've heard over the phone,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things we're
Yeah.
looking to tackle soon in our next few modules
Yeah.
that focus on income, which is why I'm pushing this out. But yeah, these are great questions. Let's see here. I think we might have a few more.
Did we answer Becky's? I think sort of. We did, didn't we?
Yeah, that a handwritten signed note should work.
Yeah.
It helps to have some sort of documentation to show like this is the expectation and
Mhm.
and then a further explanation of. And it might be good to be able to put it in terms of both monthly and annual if you're not sure,
Yeah.
just because then it'll be less back and forth with our processing center. Gosh, there's so many great questions.
So
I'm worried
Patricia's asking a great question. So Patricia, your question is, I'll shorthand it for everybody. The question is from one of the slides is that if we cannot determine you for this month or next month, we determine your eligibility based upon your annual income. Anybody who is determined on annual income will get a renewal letter come around the beginning of the year or just at the end of the calendar year, because because we're basing the eligibility on the calendar year, we have to get a new projection for the next calendar year. And therefore, yes, all of those folks will have to go through a renewal whose eligibility was based on annual income right around the beginning or at the end of the current calendar year.
And that is consistent with CMS guidelines. So I don't think we have the ability to change it to when people are filing taxes, for example, under the current way that things work. So that's why it's a batch process that starts in October for letters that would be sent maybe as early as October, but probably right at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Let's see. If people's taxes show that their income ends up being more than 100% FPL, I would say if they end up being more than 100% FPL and they are not eligible by this month or next month, then their coverage would close if they have current coverage, or if they're applying, they would likely be determined ineligible based on income, which is also why it's important for people. I mean, that 30 days doesn't change because it's an annual number either. If people's income changes drastically and it changes their projections for the year, they do need to report that and to do so in a timely manner.
Cordelia, I'm going to want to answer your question. Sometimes we're not always getting, and I know we touched on it briefly, is that the call center may not always give you the correct answer. Here's what I expect from community partners, and I want to be super clear, is that historically some community partners have been simply doing the self-attestation, and I think our call center staff have been said yes, we can accept self-attestation, but they first must try to attempt to get other more formal proofs. Now that may just simply not be possible for them because there are no other formal proofs. So make sure that if they're being asked for other formal proofs, please be clear that if they don't have those, they don't have them. And then they can take the self-attestation, so that it goes back to sort of the hierarchy. If they accept it in the past, that's fine, but moving forward, know that there may be instances where they're going to ask for a proof. If the applicant doesn't have that proof, then they sort of go down the list for the next level of proof. And ultimately, self-attestation is sort of the lower level if the other higher levels of proof are not available to the applicant. Hope that helps.
I don't want us to go too far down this rabbit hole because we will have more concrete information on this, on verification. So the main thing I want to impart is that we have these new screens. They look a bit more daunting, but they have a lot of good information. And it's I think it's a lot more user-friendly than what was there before.
I do too. I think it's my personal opinion. I think these are improvements. And so certainly from this end, even though it hasn't launched, my gut and based on what I'm seeing, it seems like an improvement.
We are over time, so I want to wrap us up. I have to say I see a few questions around this. I could not speak right now to how that 100% annual income, like how people will look back on it as the year ends. So I think that's another thing where we can maybe get more information from our operations and policy teams. I would imagine it essentially would work the same way any other income currently works, where there are checks and balances built in. We are relying on people giving us accurate information to the best of their knowledge, but there may be consequences if the projections that they give us are different from what ends up happening. And I couldn't speak in any more detail, but that there are risks. It could be considered fraud or things like that. So people should be very aware of that when they're making their projections.
Exactly, and be vigilant if there's a change that would change, you know, anytime there's an income change that's outside of whatever they projected, they should be reporting that.
All right. This was a very lively Monday module.
Yes.
I'm sure we haven't, and I know we haven't answered all of your questions. Just know that your ROC is here for you. If we don't have the answer, we will try to track it down. If you're not sure who your ROC is, or you just want to send something straight to our community.outreach inbox, that's the one that the ROC team, we trade off who's manning it on any given day. We have resources here for you. We're busy building more resources. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to sign off now because we don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you so much.